Stay light, but elsewhere blustery conditions, and we have warnings in place. Amber warning covering southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and parts of northern England. Gusts of 60-70 miles an hour. A yellow warning extending further south into Wales, the Midlands and East Anglia. Travel disruption, likelihood of damage to trees. Power interruptions also possible, particularly in that amber area. So a blustery Wednesday evening as that storm system moves through. The winds steadily easing through the night so that by Thursday, Dudley's out the way. It'll still be a blustery day with sunshine and showers. But here comes the next storm. This is Storm Eunice arriving on Friday. Still some uncertainty about the track and location, but some strong wind from that storm more likely across the southern half of the UK.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hey, welcome along. I'm Mark Steyn, live on GB News TV and GB News Radio. Feel free to mix and match tonight. The Duke of York has settled with his accuser. In the face of the Freedom Convoy, the Ottawa Police Chief throws in the towel. And Quebec is the latest to join England and Northern Ireland in breaking free from COVID stand. There's a lot of breaking news. And then there's the news that leaks out drip by drip over the years, like, say, Hillary Clinton having President Trump bugged in the Oval Office. And a victim of the Metropolitan Police and of Keir Starmer's Crown Prosecution Service, Harvey Proctor, is here. And as ever, the only part of the show we can't do without your questions and comments, email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at gbnews. Stump the Steyn is coming up. That's all after Polly Middlehurst with the news.
Mark, thank you. The top story, Prince Andrew has agreed to donate a substantial sum to Virginia Giuffre's charity. Legal papers show the Duke of York will make the payment as part of a settlement agreement in the civil sex abuse case against him in the United States. Prince Andrew has also agreed to demonstrate his regret for his association with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Lawyer Lisa Bloom, who represents 8 victims of Epstein, welcomed the settlement as a victory for Miss Giuffre.
She was able to accomplish what nobody else has. That is to get Prince Andrew to stand squarely with victims of sex trafficking and sexual abuse, to make a significant contribution to her charity, which will help other victims in cases that don't get media coverage, where celebrities aren't involved, but where many women are still suffering.
Lisa Bloom. In other news today, Vladimir Putin says Moscow is ready for talks with the West on limits for missile deployments and military transparency. It follows the Russian president insisting he's pulling some troops back from the Ukrainian border. Boris Johnson, for his part, says there are mixed signals coming out of the Kremlin, and he's threatening strengthened sanctions if Russia invades Ukraine. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg says there isn't currently any evidence that Russia is standing down.
We have not seen any de-escalation on the ground, not seen any signs of reduced Russian military presence on the borders of Ukraine.
Jens Stoltenberg. Here at home, all children between 5 and 11 years old are being offered the COVID jab, in Wales at least. The Welsh Government says it's taken the decision after reading the yet-to-be-published report from the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation. The JCVI has already given the go-ahead to vaccinating at-risk 5 to 11-year-olds. And research by the UK Health Security Agency shows people who are vaccinated are less likely to be affected by long COVID. It found 2 doses of Pfizer, AstraZeneca or Moderna, or even the single shot of Johnson & Johnson, cut the risk of developing lasting symptoms by around half. The husband of a woman killed on a film set has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the actor Alec Baldwin. Cinematographer Helena Hutchins died last October after a prop gun Baldwin was holding went off during a rehearsal for a movie. Alec Baldwin claims he did not pull the trigger. Helena's family lawyer is Brian Panish.
A young boy who will never have a mother, and it's a man who lost his wife, who he had a long-term great marriage with. So we need to have them be fully compensated.
Brian Panish. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News, and now back to Mark Steyn.
Thank you, Polly. GB Knows is a much better name. That's what we should call this channel. Thank you for getting it right, Polly. The Grand Old Duke of York, he had 10,000 lawyers, but in America, that can avail a chap naught. So he marched them up to the top of the hill, a huffing and a puffing about wanting his day in court and a jury trial, because there's nothing a New York jury finds more sympathetic than a prince of the blood and a royal duke. And in the end, he marched all his lawyers down the hill again and settled with Ms. Virginia Giuffre, who had accused him of sexual assault on 3 occasions when she was 17. Joining me now from Los Angeles is the eminent attorney, Michael Murphy. He's so eminent that he's been my attorney on more cases than I care to remember. Michael, this settling of cases is it's very much an American thing, and it's always, most people instinctively suspect that if a chap is not guilty, he wouldn't have settled. But there are other reasons that compel a defendant in that direction, aren't there?
Well, yes, there are a variety of reasons, and the most significant for him was that he had just lost his motion to dismiss. And he had a deposition that was now going to be scheduled for just a few weeks from now. And it's amazing how being forced to testify under oath can make someone change their mind about how they want to proceed, particularly given that some of his defenses that he was raising feel kind of odious when you think about the jury that is going to have to answer the question as to whether he's guilty of what he's charged.
Well, he nevertheless, until this settlement, was insisting that he could never even remember meeting Miss Giuffre. And of course, it was the fact that he thought he had nothing to fear from deposition that led him into that disastrous BBC television interview that actually wound up getting him booted from the royal family. As I said, a lot of people settle in America. The son of the Queen has never had to settle in a sexual assault case before. Do you think people who settle can they emerge from that with their reputation kind of sort of just about intact, or does the stench hang over them forever?
Well, it depends on what you're settling, and I read between the lines in the statement that was released, in that if you note, before today, he was very much on the attack against Ms. Giuffre. And today, all of a sudden, all of his language about she's a liar and she's making it up and she's trying to make money, it was all gone. And you read this statement and he's almost admitting that she is a victim of sex abuse, which by inference means he had something to do with it. So the stench can sometimes be removed, but I think the stench from this one will be difficult.
Well, what other options did he have? I mean, he was in a situation where, judging from the attitude to his motion to dismiss, his lawyers, frankly, were amateurish, I thought, in part. The judge clearly didn't like them or him. He's an unlikable foreigner in a New York court. You've been in all those situations, on the last point just with me. And those are not conditions you necessarily want to go before a jury with.
There is no reasonable lawyer I know, and that might be a small subset depending on who you talk to, but there's no reasonable lawyer I know who would recommend that he take this case to trial. He was going to get hammered because this is a sympathetic plaintiff to a panel of juries from a pool that are going to be sympathetic to her, and frankly, in a society that is generally upset with how Epstein got away with what he did, and that there's been no accountability. And so the only accountability we can find are with those who are tainted by the Epstein stench. And he was going to be the next target, for sure. You would never take this case to trial. He was going to lose.
Is he free and clear now? Because just to go back to Jeffrey Epstein thought he was free and clear. He'd come to some vaguely malodorous arrangement down in Florida, and then his jet touches down back in New York, and suddenly he's arrested, and he's thinking, wait a minute, I thought I dealt with all this 10 years ago. Why is it suddenly come back in some, you know, however you wish to explain it, it appears to be double jeopardy. That Jeffrey Epstein landed and was arrested and jailed for a lot of stuff he thought he'd gotten out of the way a decade earlier. Is the Duke of York free and clear now as far as this is concerned?
As far as this civil case, yes. But we have to remember all the different jurisdictions and authorities that can weigh in. So if you have one prosecutor in a jurisdiction in which these allegations might have touched, with a statute of limitations that's sufficiently long enough to capture him, he could be in trouble again. And who knows what other women are out there who could make the same accusation. This is just one person. So I suspect we haven't heard the last of accusations about this gentleman, especially given that I think there's going to be a consistent drumbeat of people wanting a pound of flesh. And sometimes settlements just don't feel like the pound of flesh, especially when you have prosecutors in various jurisdictions who may want to see this as a way to advance their career.
Well, let's explore that a bit then, Michael, because Jeffrey Epstein, we're told, was some big-time paedophile who was running a racket of underage girls whom he procured to provide services to wealthy and powerful people, whom he flew to his private island on his private jet, which jet has manifests with all these famous people's names on it. And yet, and I say this, understanding you're a red-blooded and patriotic American, but I wonder, don't you think it's a little odd that the only two people who have paid a price for Jeffrey Epstein's entire racket are not any of the famous names on the Lolita Express, Bill Clinton, Bill Richardson, George Mitchell, these are presidents and senators and governors, but two British subjects, Ghislaine Maxwell and the Duke of York, neither of whom are big shot names. I mean, Ghislaine Maxwell got convicted of sex trafficking by the federal justice system, which has zero interest, apparently, in any of the famous men she was sex trafficking these girls to. Don't you find that a little odd?
I find it very odd. But, we have to remember that, so justice has limited resources and can't seek justice for all victims. And it has to pick and choose. And sometimes the decisions as to what we prosecute and what we don't are influenced by more suspicious decisions. There's a reason why Bill Clinton was never prosecuted or really investigated for some of the more serious accusations that came to light during the Monica Lewinsky investigation. So it's not a surprise to me. It's disappointing to me. There are a lot of people on those manifests who should have some accountability. And I don't think it's suspicious. I just think it's disappointing.
Well, that's one way of putting it. Thank you very much for that, Michael. And I think the Duke would do well to take your advice. If I were him, I'd be very wary of landing a plane in the U.S. Virgin Islands or in New York at any point in the years ahead. He'd do well to steer clear of that. Thank you very much, Michael Murphy. Let me know your thoughts. gbviews@gbnews.uk. or via Twitter at GB News. Prince Andrew was at high school, as they say, high school in Ontario. And his ex-wife, Fergie of beloved memory, his ex-wife claims that he was offered the Governor-Generalship of Canada and that his decision to refuse it broke up their marriage. How many divorced couples can say that? Well, he's presently sitting in Rideau Hall, Government House in Ottawa. I wonder what he would make of Justin Trudeau's decision to invoke the so-called Emergencies Act. I say so-called because Emergencies is basically a euphemism for the War Measures Act, which it replaced, which was invoked just thrice, World War I, World War II, and during a terror campaign by Quebec separatists that saw the kidnapping of the UK Trade Commission in Montreal. So now we have a fourth crisis, bouncy castles and hot tubs on the streets of Ottawa. Here now is barrister Joanna Barron, Executive Director of the Canadian Constitution Foundation. A lot of lawyers on the show tonight, so we're trying to vary it from the California bar and the Canadian bar, just like mix up the lawyers. Okay, Joanna is at the Canadian Constitution Foundation, and well, let's start with that question: is this constitutional, or does it infringe upon Canadians' liberties for no good reason?
I would say I wouldn't even get to Constitution. I would say that on the basic statutory requirements of the Emergencies Acts, the preconditions are not met. There is not an imminent threat to the whole country, which is defined in the Act as foreign espionage, terrorism, threats to the territorial integrity of Canada. Furthermore, it also has to be a matter that the provinces are incapable of dealing with. And I cannot see a reason. We can talk about the Ottawa police and their disgraceful ineptitude, but that's not an issue of them not having the powers to deal with essentially a convoy of trucks parked on Wellington. So the Constitution we can talk about, but the Act is very plainly, and every lawyer I've spoken to across the political spectrum has agreed, if the government has some information about, for example, some terrorist plot, they better be forthcoming with it very soon, because it simply doesn't look applicable.
Very strange times in which both US and UK intelligence say that Putin is going to invade Ukraine at 1 a.m. London time tonight. And yet, for something that you would have thought it'd be much easier to get reliable info on, we know nothing about the supposed threat to the integrity of the Canadian state that's being posed by what is essentially a mass parking violation on Wellington Street, as you said. There's an irony here in that this protest is about government overreach. Is that these truckers have said, no, we're sick of this. It's been 2 years now, and you're reaching into every aspect of our life, including whether we qualify, we're eligible to go to work. And Trudeau's reaction to that is to overreach even further with this cockamamie phony war measures act. How's it going down well with the general populace?
I think the general populace really wishes that this government could find some middle ground between hiding out and cross-country skiing in the Gatineau region, where the Prime Minister was for the first few weeks of this, and coming out and declaring the War Measures Act, you say. So it would be great to see a bit of moderation between those two positions. There's two other things to mention. First, as you know, the provinces are already unwinding restrictions. For the most part, all of these COVID restrictions have been the purview, the jurisdiction of course, the provinces. They have wide latitude over public health, things like that. So Alberta, Saskatchewan, not surprising. They said we're dropping the vax passports restrictions. But then Ontario and Quebec, which have been, much more draconian, also followed suit this week. In the meantime, in Ottawa, Trudeau seems to be doubling down. The other thing to mention is this is not just a sort of blunt show of force, although that certainly is there. The Emergency Act allows state actors to prevent any public assembly. But I was more disturbed by the sort of follow the money financial reporting provisions that Chrystia Freeland brought in. So she announced that now there's going to be regulation that directs banks that if they suspect an individual has connections to the protest, that they can freeze or suspend accounts without a court order, and they are absolved from civil liability. So this means, if you make a donation, perhaps even if you make a social media post, it seems like the government is saying, shut it down, freeze the money. And the sort of rumored explanation for this is we know that a lot of the donations supporting the convoy are coming in from the United States. But in the meantime, it's a very chilling regulation, and it has been said she made it clear during her press conference that this is going to be permanent law in Canada.
Yeah. Which is absolutely, people keep talking about martial law, but it's not clear to me right now that if he were to call in the military are said to have privately indicated to him that, this is your problem, don't get us mixed up in it. The RCMP, the Mounties and the Ontario Provincial Police are now going to be taking over policing in Ottawa because the municipal police department has proved generally incompetent. But the threat isn't that he's going to have soldiers on the street busting things up, because a lot of those soldiers would refuse to do it. The threat, as you say, is he's going to go to you know, Mrs. Scroggins gave $30 to the Canadian truckers, and she lives at 27B Strathcona Gardens, and he's going to freeze her bank account, and he'll do it to 30 other selected people and terrify everybody else from making donations to Trudeau's political enemies ever again. That's a very disturbing thing in a democratic state, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. It's true that the financial reporting obligation is for $10,000 or above, but the provision about freezing accounts, there's no dollar amounts specified. It's just anytime the banks are suspicious. And I would imagine everybody at the big 5 banks in Canada are panicking today with their legal counsel about what exactly this means their obligation is. But in terms of sending in the military and things like that, he has ruled it out. However, Ontario Provincial Police and Doug Ford already have the ability on their own to call in the assistance of the armed forces. This did not merit the Emergencies Act. The Ottawa Police, we'll see what happens. It's just breaking news, expected to be announced today that the police chief is going to be resigning. Nobody's particularly surprised. His career was clearly over about 48 hours into this when he said there's no policing solution to this. Not sure about why. Here in Toronto, where I live, the protests have gone on the weekend, and then the police has cleared them out at 10 p.m. and that was that. That's how, lawful protests should happen. But Ottawa just got sunk in somehow. Something went very wrong with the police and law enforcement.
Well, a lot of, let's put it this way, that if you look at a lot of other Western leaders, like Monsieur Macron in Paris, for all he decided when the convoy was approaching Paris this last weekend, all these other prime ministers and presidents, Trudeau's had Joe Biden on the phone to him saying, you're really screwing this up, man. You gotta come up with something. All these other guys are saying, whatever happens in our countries, we're not going to wind up. Even Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, who's been playing Barry Manilow very loud 24/7 to the truckers at Parliament House in Wellington. I mean, she didn't go into hiding. She didn't say, oh, I've come down with a bad case of the Omicron. I'll see you in a couple of weeks, and I'll leave it to my useless Ottawa police chief to be seen to be dragging away the bouncy castle operator. All the other prime ministers think that Trudeau is a joke the way he's handled this, and yet millions of Canadians somehow take his side. Very, very odd, that.
I suppose so. Look, he's been doubling down on divisive rhetoric since the fall 2021 election. His sort of superpower has always been his ability to project empathy, and he decided, I'm going to project my empathy towards the vaccinated majority and utterly scapegoat the unvaccinated minority. Those chickens look like they're coming home to roost. And by the way, the Ontario Police did the most important thing strategically, which is clear the Ambassador Bridge in Windsor. I mean, frankly, Ottawa is the nation's capital, but it's not the site of $400 million of trade a day. We really need to get that bridge clear. Again, the fact that, the Windsor Police with some friends from across the country managed to do that. I saw that everybody just drove away, went fine. I'm utterly shell-shocked at what happened on Monday in this country.
Yeah, no, it's a terrible business, this, and it has diminished the meaning of that act. At least, when his daddy did it half a century ago, it was a weird time in Quebec. They were kidnapping people. They killed one of their hostages. And you can argue about whether it rises to the scale of the First World War. But when you've got, like, the UK Trade Commission in Montreal being kidnapped, that is a thing. This time he's up against people with bouncy castles and hot tubs on the street, and he needs to go to war against them. It's weird. How does Canadian liberty look 3 weeks into this thing, Joanna?
It looks pretty grim, I have to admit, and I'm astounded by the short-sightedness of my colleagues who are saying that this is justified because it's gotten out of hand. what's going to happen when there's a rowdy, what would have happened if something like this was applied to a progressive protest? For example, a BLM protest, which our prime minister attended in June 2020 and took a knee. And God forbid the question about freezing assets and watching where the money is flowing from. It's incredibly hypocritical, and it may just be a mere assertion of hierarchy, that the left feels that they have a perpetual hegemony, so they don't have to worry about these types of measures being applied to them. We'll see about that.
No. Well, thank you very much, Joanna. We appreciate that. We did ask Canada House if the High Commissioner, and in fact former Trudeau Cabinet Minister Ralph Goodale, would like to come on and defend the government's actions, but Mr Goodale has not responded. Maybe he's off skiing with Monsieur Trudeau. When we come back, your reaction to the news of the day. And Harvey Proctor is here. He's had a terrible few years, and Scotland Yard and Keir Starmer played their part in that. Plus, Donald Trump claimed for years that he was spied on by the deep state on behalf of his political opponents in the Democrat Party, and he was ridiculed by the American media for promoting a ludicrous conspiracy theory. And then, like so many ludicrous conspiracy theories these days, it turns out to be true. See you in a couple of minutes.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hey, let's get straight to your comments. Clementine, what a fabulous name. I think you're the first Clementine that I've had since this show started, and it's great. We need more Clementines. Beautiful name. Clementine says the truckers should stay because they are not only doing it for Canadians. They're sending out a clear message to other leaders that citizens will not tolerate these restrictions any longer, and the people will rise up and protest until they are lifted. Can you hear the people sing as they sing in Les Miserables? And it's very unusual for people around the world to hear Canadians sing. I can't think of any precedent for this in which something starts with truckers driving to Ottawa, and then the next thing you know, the Netherlands is lifting its COVID restrictions, and there are demonstrations in Paris, moving on to Brussels, and all the rest of it. It's quite unprecedented. It's an amazing thing. As Canada goes, so goes the world. I don't believe anyone has ever said that in the history of humanity. Don says, well, actually, Don has just said it too. Don says what's happening in Canada will determine what happens in the rest of the world. They cannot give up. They have worldwide support. Yeah, it's very interesting. This is the sort of thing you might have expected in America, but because of the way all those January 6th insurrection type guys from last year, if you recall, they're all sitting in jail doing that lousy, dirty, stinking, rotten, corrupt federal justice thing, where they're sitting in jail for over a year awaiting charges. They haven't even got a trial date for trespassing charges. So nobody wants to do that in America because they're already at the stage where they freeze your bank accounts and wreck your life and all the rest of it. Helen says the truckers should stay. Trudeau is using despotic bullying tactics. This all has to stop. He's like a child who stamps its feet when it can't get its own way. I like the way you refer to the child as it's there. That's splendidly non-binary of you, Helen. But you're right. He is like a child, but he is a despotic and bullying child. And his numbers are sinking actually very fast because of this. And it would be a fantastic thing, by the way, after the extraordinary action taken by Western governments for 2 years, it would be terrific if one or two of them paid a price and were removed from office either by their caucus or by a non-confidence vote in Parliament. Bring it on. A Twitter user says, this is difficult. A good leader inspires and unites people rather than cause dystopia, misery and dysfunctional society. Yeah, that's the Canadian version of life, liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Dystopia, misery and dysfunctional society. The French have liberté, égalité, fraternité, and Canada has dystopia, misery and dysfunctional society. That's a fabulous message. You should put it on the coat of arms. Good government listens to the disaffected and brings order out of chaos, nurtures citizens and empowers them to live in freedom and peace. Trudeau does none of that. The Durham report is partially in. No, not the first Earl of Durham's report on the affairs of British North America in 1839, which led to a responsible government in Nova Scotia, as I'm sure I don't need to tell you, and then in the Dominion of Canada, and over the next century and 3/4 across the empire from Belize to Mauritius to Papua New Guinea, and it was all working so well until Justin Trudeau proclaimed himself Il Duce, the first Duce with LGBTQ socks, very fetching. No, this Durham report is by an American chap called John Durham. He was appointed, around about the time the first Lord Durham was appointed, 1839 or thereabouts, to investigate FBI shenanigans in the Donald Trump campaign. But the Americans move rather more leisurely in these things, so the pennies are dropping very slowly. Nevertheless, there have been bombshell disclosures in the last few days, including that a company installing an internet system in the White House colluded with the Hillary Clinton campaign to spy on Trump in the Oval Office. With me now from Regent University is Michelle Bachmann, a former presidential candidate and also former member of the House Committee overseeing the intelligence agencies. Michelle, this actually is quite extraordinary because the most extreme conspiracy theory, which is that the political opposition to Donald Trump actually was surveilling him while he was in the Oval Office, turns out to be true. And I know the American media are yawning and saying old news and nothing to see here and all the rest of it, but that ought to be pretty much a stunner, shouldn't it?
I think it will be a stunner. I think it's going to be a big, big stunner. And as much as the mainstream media is trying to ignore this, as you said, the mainstream media in Canada did the same to the truckers at the beginning. But this is a movement that won't be stopped. Why? Because none other than Hillary Clinton had her lawyers work together with the internet company and work together with the lawyer from the Democrat National Committee, all housed in this big deal law firm called Perkins Coie. And it wasn't some underling at Perkins Coie. It was a partner at Perkins Coie who was working with the internet provider and they were trying to mine data to show that Trump was placing phone calls to the Russians. It all fell apart, so they couldn't prove anything that this was happening because it never did. It was a fairy tale. It was a fairy tale that originated in the mind of Hillary Clinton, and it wound its way into an impeachment of Donald Trump, and it continues to be unwound today. And the mainstream media still isn't interested, but just like the persistent truckers, this is not going to go away because now we have proof positive that there was evidence. And as a matter of fact, the head of the CIA, John Brennan, briefed Barack Obama as to what Hillary's plan was while Joe Biden was president of the United States. There are more storylines here, Mark. This is not going anywhere.
I kind of understand why the media are being a little cool about this, because essentially they served as the public relations guys for the Hillary campaign for 4 years on this whole sort of Russia thing. But there's a point. If I were them and I wanted to kind of get myself off the petard I hoist myself on, the way I do it is this. It's this internet provider. And presumably, you know, we all know when you get given a contract by the federal government, you undergo background checks and all the rest of it. This internet provider who does a deal to set up a spying operation in the Oval Office for Hillary Clinton. I mean, if he can do it for Hillary, there must be guys, in other words, if Hillary can get a bug into the Oval Office, then we should assume that the Chinese and the Russians and the Iranians and, you know, who knows, the Belgians, the Luxembourgers, then everybody's doing it too. And that ought to be very disturbing, oughtn't it?
Well, when I was reading the stories over this weekend, Mark, the thing that occurred to me, because as you said, I sat on the vaunted Intelligence Committee in the United States, and there is no shortage of money that the United States spends on our intelligence community. It's a very lavishly funded community. How in the world could this have gone on, not only when Donald Trump was a candidate, but as you said, while he was president of the United States? And our intelligence committee, our crack intelligence team, the FBI, the CIA, the Department of Justice, who knows who, didn't pick up that there was a bug going on in the Oval Office and that it came from none other than Hillary Clinton. And it isn't just Hillary Clinton. These are all fellow travelers. This is Barack Obama. This is Joe Biden. They were all in on this deal. It wasn't just them. Would you have John Brennan briefing Obama about what Hillary's plan is, and nobody thinks to say, maybe this isn't such a good idea. Maybe this might be a crime. Oh, okay, well, let's see how far this goes. It's absolutely devastating, and that's why it won't go away. It can't go away. And the Republicans better wake up and recognize this is the story.
Well, this is the same lavishly funded intelligence community that has just assured us that at 1 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time tonight, Vladimir Putin is going to invade Ukraine, but they don't. So they've got crack intelligence sources in the Kremlin, and they don't notice that every time Donald Trump wanders by the big lamp on the end table, his words are being recorded by the Hillary Clinton campaign in the Oval. This is ludicrous.
Well, we all thought that this was kabuki theater. Now we're finding out it's really slapstick. So we aren't even melodrama. It's slapstick.
No, you're right. Well, thank you, Michelle. As I said, John Durham's report has been going along a lot longer than the Earl of Durham's did in the 1830s, so we'll be talking about this for many years to come yet, I think. Always a pleasure to see you. Coming up, former Member of Parliament Harvey Proctor. Plus, send me your questions for Stump the Stein. You can email them to gbviews at GBNews or tweet me at GBNews. All that straight ahead.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. Coming up on Dan Wootton Tonight, should more hospitality venues stand up for freedom of choice? Celebrity chef Anthony Worrell Thompson was branded anti-vax after opening his pub to the unjabbed. He'll discuss live why he has no regrets about joining the front line of the battle for COVID equality. Plus, GB News favourites Nigel Farage and Darren Grimes will give their must-hear takes on the issues that matter to you. And I'll break down the day's biggest talking points with my superstar panel. The Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, former Daily Star editor Dawn Neeson, and author and journalist Rebecca Reed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
As we've discussed on this show, Boris Johnson accused Keir Starmer of failing to prosecute Jimmy Savile. And that happens to be true, but for some reason you're not allowed to raise the subject of Sir Keir's tenure as Director of Public Prosecutions, even though it's the only job-type job he's ever held. So whether he was any good at it is directly relevant to whether he should be Prime Minister. But the Jimmy Savile case wasn't the only botched job on Starmer's watch. With me now is a victim of Cressida Dick's Scotland Yard and Keir Starmer's Crown Prosecution Service. He wound up losing his job, losing his money, living in a garden shed. And he is an innocent man. Harvey Proctor joins me. Harvey, it's good to see you, and it's good to see you actually looking quite hale and hearty, because you had a miserable few years, not just at the hands of an obvious fantasist that should be kicked out of the door with a flea in his ear, but the fact that the organs of the state all went along with the obvious fantasist.
Well, good afternoon to you and good evening to your viewers. Yes, it was a fantasist which the Metropolitan Police decided to believe was credible and true before they really started investigating his allegations against me and others towards the end of 2014.
Yeah, and the others included, I mean, just to put it in a nutshell, this guy, I think his name was Carl Beach, but he basically said, oh yeah, there's famous members of the House of Lords. They're meeting up at the Carlton Club every other Wednesday to drink the blood of 9-year-old boys. I mean, it was all complete drivel. And as you pointed out in your piece at Conservative Home today, you know, the guy was already in the police database because he'd already gone to the Wiltshire police and tried to insert himself into the Jimmy Savile case. So we have here a clear case of the police being, not only the police being incredibly stupid, but also because they spent over a year wrecking your life. And at some point early on in that year, they would have sent a file over to the Crown Prosecution Service saying, do you think this is a prosecutable case? So at some point, Keir Starmer's boys were involved in this, weren't they?
Well, let's get the facts. Keir Starmer is responsible for when he was DPP up to 2013. That is before Operation Midland, the operation that looked at Carl Beech's allegations against me and others, started. So why is Keir Starmer responsible? He's responsible because while he was DPP, and then when he sought to become an MP and became an MP, he sought to change the law in this country. It used to be innocent until proven guilty. He wanted to change it to give more strength and support to victims, irrespective of whether they were victims or not. And so the Believe the Victim policy was really started under the reign of the DPP's Sir Keir Starmer. Because of the pressure from speeches and political pressure, the police, Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary, in 2014, told all police forces to institutionalise the belief that victims should be believed. As a result of that, when a person like, for example, Carl Beech came along, he had an acronym of NIC to keep his anonymity. They believed him. However incredible the allegations he made were. Against me, he said that I'd murdered 3 children, together with others, including a former Prime Minister, Edward Heath, who I didn't get on with Lord Britton, with Field Marshal Lord Bramall, former head of the British Armed Forces, the head of MI5 and MI6. Completely incredible allegations, but before investigating, a detective superintendent from the Metropolitan Police went on television and said that this man was credible and true. It was a euphemism for believe the victim. In fact, he was not true, and he was not credible.
You lost everything. If I remember this correctly, at that time you were working for the Duke and Duchess of Rutland at Belvoir Castle. You wound up leaving Belvoir Castle almost immediately and ended up, as I said at the top of the show, living in a garden shed. So you lost everything, and yet when it all came out that it was on the word of Carl Beech, a man who in fact is now doing an 18-year jail term and was in fact a child abuser himself. In other words, it was his own particular proclivities that he was imposing on you and Field Marshal Lord Bramall and all these other people. The Metropolitan Police settled with you, but at the same time, the commissioner retired and got given a peerage and all the rest of it. It doesn't seem to have done any damage to the people who did this to you.
Well, that is true. The police officers involved in the Operation Midland, which a retired High Court judge said in his report had committed 43 errors, including illegal search warrants of my home and that of Lady Britton and Field Marshal Lord Bramall. The officers responsible for these errors were promoted, enriched, ennobled, pensioned off with higher pensions. And when they were investigated, very few of them were asked a single question. And on this matter, the present Commissioner, Dame Cressida Dick, who actually was a slightly junior officer at the Met at the time, in 2014, actually established Operation Midland. She didn't even go to the retired judge to say, I have evidence to give. Then she came back in 2017 as the Commissioner and has committed personal error upon personal error. Now, she's going at the behest of the Mayor of London, really for falling foul of wokeism. But I called for Cressida Dick to go 3 or 4 years ago on grounds of personal error, which has cost the ratepayer of London several millions of pounds.
You're being very sober in just looking at it as a financial question. The damage done to your life and to the Brammells' lives, and I mean, the last Lady Bramwell died not knowing whether any of these awful allegations against her husband, whether his life had been entirely meaningless and worthless. When you're accused of murdering 3 children for some kinky, deranged sexual pleasure, we were talking at the top of the show about the Duke of York and this settlement with his accuser in New York, whether the stench of it hangs over you. Do you feel that whatever happened, Carl Beech is in jail, but you lost your job, you lost your house. Do you feel that the stench of it will always hang over you?
Yes, in times of difficulty, you have to look to your achievements. You must look to your achievements. You must look to the future, and you must pluck up courage. That is what I have tried to do. Carl Beech is in prison. 2 further witnesses, known as A and B, who also lied to the Metropolitan Police about me and others connected with Operation Midland, the Metropolitan Police refused to investigate them, let alone prosecute them. That is something that I am campaigning on. They should be investigated to see whether they too committed acts of lying to influence a court and to influence the police. Sir Richard Enriquez, that eminent retired High Court judge, certainly thinks they should be investigated. The Metropolitan Police and Cressida Dick, in her infinite wisdom, does not. Hopefully, a new commissioner will take a different view.
Well, Cressida Dick got a damehood out of it, and her predecessor got a peerage out of it. This is quite disgraceful. As you say, basically, Keir Starmer's regime changed the rules at the Crown Prosecution Service to go towards this always believe the victim thing, even if they're obvious, ludicrous, sick fantasies, in this case, projecting their own particular sick tastes on others. Harvey Proctor, I'm amazed you've withstood what these guys did to you over that terrible year and the years since, and I'm glad you've survived. I'm glad you're out of that garden shed. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's been sobering to hear from you. Let's get to, we can do a quickie stump the sign thing. I think we can do just one. Yvonne says, net zero, why is the green agenda still going ahead? Well, the green agenda is still going ahead because politicians would rather deal with stuff that's going to happen, if at all, in the 22nd century than anything that's going to make any difference now. That'll do it. Dan Wootton's here to titillate your Tuesday. Stay safe, stay free.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Stormy conditions on the way through the rest of this week. We have an amber weather warning in place through Wednesday across parts of northern Britain because of Storm Dudley. Ahead of that, this evening, another area of low pressure will bring wet and increasingly windy conditions. But here comes Storm Dudley behind that through Wednesday afternoon and evening across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and northern England. That's where the strongest winds are likely to be. But back to Tuesday evening, wet